Welcome to another episode of Stocks to Watch for exclusive one-on-one discussions with company leaders to help you make informed investment decisions. I'm Ashley Berry, and today we're focused on the clean energy transition driving a global increase in demand. Specifically, we're talking nickel. Andrew Penkethman, Managing Director and CEO of Ardea Resources, is here with us to discuss this in more depth. They're listed on the Australian Stock Exchange as ARL and the OTCQB in the US as ARRRF. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Hi, Ashley. Great to be here.
Great to have you. So, although you're still in the development stage, you do own 100% of the Kalgoorlie Nickel Project. And that project was awarded major project status by the federal government in March of 2022. Can you tell us briefly about the project and, of course, the current ore reserve there?
Thanks, Ashley. Look, the Kalgoorlie Nickel Project, or the KNP as we like to refer it to, all of our tenements, very strategically located within an arc of 100 kilometres northwest to east of the city of Kalgoorlie Boulder. And for those not familiar with the Australian resources sector, the city of Kalgoorlie Boulder is very much the mining capital of Australia. So we've got very supportive community, a lot of skilled service providers. We've got university, international airport. It's just a really good place to be based, and the infrastructure there is outstanding and already supports a number of very large resource operations, particularly in the gold and also the nickel sector. So the most advanced project within the KNP we call the Goongarrie Hub, and that's located 70 kilometres northwest of the city of Kalgoorlie Boulder. We've got the Goldfields Highway and the rail line passing right through our granted mining leases, and they've got direct links to City Kalgoorlie Boulder, deep sea port on the south coast at Esperance, and also several ports immediately south of Perth on the west coast. Just to put the Kalgoorlie Nickel Project into perspective, it has been recognised by Geoscience Australia as the largest nickel-cobalt resource in Australia. We recently defined an updated ore reserve at Goongarrie linked to our 5th of July 2023 ASX announcement for our PFS, and that ore reserve's over 194 million tonnes at 0.7% nickel, 0.05% cobalt, for over 1.3 million tonnes of nickel and over 99,000 tonnes of cobalt. So it's very much a globally strategic project poised to play a very meaningful role in ensuring nickel and cobalt production with very high ESG standards to assist with the global transition.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like it's in a prime location. You mentioned the university and the airport. I have to imagine there's railways there. Pretty fantastic. I understand the pre-feasibility study conducted on the project estimates a long-term operation of over 40 years. And this is significant, an estimated annual production rate of approximately 30,000 tons of nickel and 2,000 tons of cobalt. So really, what does that lead to on an average in terms of free cash flow per year and net present value? And how sensitive is this project to fluctuating commodity prices?
We're really pleased with the financial metrics defined in our recent PFS ASX announcement. And as you mentioned, those production figures sort of place us at the high end of nickel and cobalt production within Australia. And even look from years 1 to 5 post the ramp up, we'll be producing over 34,000 tonnes of nickel per annum and over 3,000 tonnes of cobalt. And every resources operation will aim to access the highest grade and lowest cost ore at the beginning of the project to enhance those financial metrics on a discount cash flow basis. So to give you a feel for the financial metrics, so the post-tax net present value is just under $5 billion Australian. The internal rate of returns 23%. And we see this, once we're in operation, as a very long life strategic asset. As you mentioned, we've got over 40 years of ore reserves defined, and that's only assessing 6 of 9 deposits within the Goongarrie Hub. So we see opportunities to further extend the mine life. So in all reality, we expect this project to be going well in excess of 50 years. And to give you an indication of the strategic cash flow generation, we anticipate annual EBITDA of $800 million Australian every year, and that's based on our PFS inputs. In terms of being able to work through the resources and commodity price cycles, we see prices go up and go down, but the outlook for nickel and cobalt in particular, we see is exceptional, particularly from 2030 onwards. We feel the outlook for nickel and cobalt's never been stronger. We've got existing traditional uses of nickel, such as the stainless steel sector, but we've got unprecedented growth coming from the electric vehicle sector and energy storage for long life batteries that have nickel and cobalt cathode chemistries. And we certainly talk to a number of lithium-ion battery manufacturers as well, and the majority of those are looking at higher nickel density cathodes, so going from 80% nickel to in excess of 90%. So as I mentioned, the outlook for nickel and cobalt's never been stronger, and we anticipate from 2030 onwards unprecedented demand.
Yeah, I really appreciate the fact that you kind of broke it down and explained the importance of nickel, cobalt, why we need it. You recently signed a non-binding memorandum of understanding with an experienced Japanese consortium comprised of Sumitomo Metal Mining, Mitsubishi Corporation to work on the definitive feasibility study. Those are some pretty big names here. What encouraged you to initiate this collaboration, and when do you expect this definitive study to be released? Congratulations, by the way.
No, thanks a lot, Ashley. So from our perspective, we're a small company with a globally significant resource, and we've been running a strategic partner process to help identify quality partners to work with us to complete our definitive feasibility study, which will commence in 2024. And then most importantly, will work with us to secure a globally competitive export credit agency debt. This is a very large project, and by looking at partners such as the Japanese consortium, we've seen the example of Mitsubishi. They've got decades of operating experience in Australia, and the Japanese industry have been integral to opening up and assisting Australia in developing their globally competitive iron ore sector and natural gas sector, for example. So we're looking to emulate that cooperation and success in the battery minerals such as nickel and cobalt. And if we look at Sumitomo Metal Mining, they are the most successful company in the world in developing and operating nickel laterite projects. So we see the Japanese consortium as being the perfect partners for us, and we just can't wait to commence the DFS with them once we conclude final agreements that are on track for being executed in the March quarter of 2024.
Yeah, and it really sounds to me that this is only kind of bolstering your credibility as a company. You have other projects as well where you're exploring for nickel sulphide and other battery and critical minerals on your other properties. Can you elaborate on your work on those projects as well as the status?
It's a really good point, Ashley. A lot of people just think about the KMP and the Goongarrie hub, but we've got to bear in mind that we've had a first mover advantage. Ardea has been putting together this tenement portfolio for many years, and it totals over 4,000 square kilometres. And the nickel laterites form an ultramafic rocks, but it's those same ultramafic rocks that are prospective for hosting nickel sulphides. So we've had some success at a project we call Kalpini, 70 kilometres east of the city of Kalgoorlie, Boulder. And we've been doing some exploration there and getting some really promising results. And once we conclude the strategic partner process with the Japanese consortium, we'll be very much open to further evaluation on our strategic tenement portfolio. And in addition to the nickel sulphide, so we've already identified a number of critical minerals such as rare earth elements and their geological setting. For example, I don't want to get bogged down in too much technical detail, but we've identified a number of intrusives that have weathered, and the laterite acts a bit like a big sponge, and a lot of these rare earth elements have been enhanced within the laterite profile as well. So we see a scenario in the future, yes, nickel and cobalt will be the first minerals targeted for production, but we can also look at critical minerals like scandium and other rare earths as well in the future.
Yeah, it really sounds like with these multiple projects, you really are in prime locations in both areas, actually all three areas that you're talking about. Why now is the right time to invest in Ardea Resources? And if you can maybe explain a little bit for our audience about the importance of nickel, cobalt, and of course, the other things that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, look, the key takeaways for us, it's the global significance of the Kalgoorlie Nickel Project, Nickel-Cobalt resource. As I mentioned, it is the largest in Australia. And as we look at supply chain security and geopolitical considerations, we've got to have jurisdictions such as Australia that can guarantee production to very high ESG standards that the world expects to increase their production. So Ardea is perfectly poised to play a meaningful role in that. And then on top of that, we've got a very experienced and dedicated team within Ardea. All of the board have sort of lived and worked in Western Australia for decades. A number of us have lived in the city of Kalgoorlie, Boulder, and the Eastern Goldfields. We've got fantastic local support and contacts, and then being able to work with industry leaders such as the Japanese consortium. We feel it's the perfect combination to start to develop Goongarrie and then look at that internal pipeline of growth at the other KMP projects. So we're poised to start with Goongarrie, but continue that growth with projects that Ardea already has 100% control of. We look at the macro background, and obviously in the US, you're very familiar with the Inflation Reduction Act. And, we've seen the United States government come out and provide some clarity around the foreign entities of concern. And we see that again putting Australia in a very favourable position to help supply battery and critical minerals to jurisdictions such as the United States, Japan, Korea, European Union, etc.
Yes, and the fact that you have the community support, I'm really glad you mentioned that, because that, I think, is critical in operations moving forward. Yes?
Absolutely. You've got to have that social license to operate, as some people refer to it, and being respectful to the community and having those local relationships is absolutely essential. And we're in a very fortunate position in that regard. We've got a local office in the city of Kalgoorlie, Boulder, and fantastic local relationships.
Terrific to hear. Andrew Penkethman, Managing Director and CEO of Ardea Resources Limited. Thank you. We very much appreciate all of your insights, and we look forward to sharing more on your exciting story here on Stocks to Watch.
Thanks very much, Ashley.